American truck history has been presented as a sanitized narrative for decades. We celebrate the standard Fords and Chevys as if they built this country alone, which ignores the wider reality. The giant corporate conglomerates did not build the pickup market by themselves. Real innovation actually happened in the shadows. Desperate dreamers built risky machines that major factories tried to forget. I spent months digging through archival blueprints and dusty patent filings. My findings revealed a frustrating truth about the industry. Masterful automotive engineering of the 20th century was completely ignored just because buyers resisted change, clinging to familiar sheet metal. Today, we are exposing 10 forgotten old American trucks wiped from the mainstream record. These machines are the rejects, the pioneers, and the unusual outliers of the era. Look closely at these historical photographs. You are staring at the forgotten soul of Detroit. Back in the mid-1950s, pickups rode like farm tractors and smelled like oil. Chevrolet decided to insult the working man's aesthetic to build a luxury hauler. The 1955 Cameo Carrier completely altered that approach. Designer Chuck Jordan despised bulging fenders, wrapping the bed in smooth fiberglass panels instead. He bolted passenger car taillights onto the back, then installed actual carpeting inside the cab. Instead of traditional rubber mats, this payload vehicle featured pristine carpet. Executives thought he was losing his mind. The public firmly rejected the concept. Chevy sold just over 5,000 units that first year, a low number that ultimately forced competitors to rethink what a hauler could be. Despite dying fast, the Cameo succeeded by giving birth to the modern lifestyle pickup. Decades before the El Camino crossed a drafting board, one unique machine emerged. Studebaker took a major risk in 1937 by taking the chassis of a luxury dictator coupe and manufacturing a purpose-built factory utility body behind it to create the Coupe Express. Well-known designer Raymond Loewy's styling team shaped the front end to resemble an aerodynamic bullet. This vehicle drove exactly like a high-end passenger car, absorbing pothole impacts with surprising ease. Buyers hated it. Only about 5,000 sold during its 3-year run. Great Depression consumers demanded rigid categories. Cars carried families, while trucks carried gravel. Combining them confused the market, causing Studebaker to bleed cash on the project. The company never fully recovered from that financial blow. It stands as a clear example of predicting the future perfectly while misreading the present. Museum curators still fight over the surviving chassis today. Dodge watched those luxury failures and chose a heavy-duty approach instead. Hitting the pavement with aggressive power, their 1964 Custom Sport Special became the first true performance truck. The market never requested this configuration. Most factories focused totally on cheap utility, but Dodge sneaked a huge 426 wedge V8 under the hood of a standard D100 swept line. They placed 365 horsepower into a traditional farm vehicle. Those poor rear leaf springs fought desperately to keep the tires pinned to the asphalt. Dodge even installed bucket seats in a work vehicle. Engineers added a center console and slapped racing stripes down the roof, turning a delivery run into a drag race. This machine outran sports cars from a red light, which terrified the insurance adjusters. Dealerships had zero clue how to pitch it. Vanishing quickly, this performance hauler left a permanent blueprint. While Dodge chased raw speed, another manufacturer chased luxury. Consider the 1938 Diamond T Model 201. People called this one-ton truck the Cadillac of commercial haulers. Diamond T normally built oversized rigs for moving freight. Shrinking their industrial architecture down to pickup size, they kept the durable Hercules engine. They finished the front end in heavy chrome. That elaborate grille belonged on a custom limousine. Drivers stared at an ornate electric clock right on the dashboard while hauling livestock across muddy, rural fields. This level of luxury was unusual for agricultural work. The asking price exceeded normal budgets. trapping it exclusively in the hands of wealthy contractors. Ford buyers looked at this machine with utter resentment. Almost nobody bought them. Management eventually abandoned the light-duty market forever. Strip away the chrome, and you get the most unusual spatial geometry ever forced onto an American road. Jeep chose a radical aesthetic with their 1956 forward control. Designer Brooks Stevens shoved the driver's cab directly over the front axle. The design appears deeply unnatural. That flat face practically scrapes the pavement. Because they eliminated the hood, engineers squeezed a large payload box onto a wheelbase shorter than a modern compact sedan, measuring just 81 inches. The physics of the design defied conventional engineering, yet it scaled mountain trails and plowed deep snowbanks effortlessly. However, the strange proportions alienated buyers, and the underpowered engine failed to meet highway expectations. Sales flatlined. Executives at other automakers actually copied the flat nose concept quickly, launching an entire generation of cab-over pickups from the Big Three. The original concept was ultimately ignored by the public. Representing a fascinating dead end in Detroit logic, Hudson took a wildly different path. They refused to build a dedicated truck chassis for the 1947 Big Boy. Instead, they engineered a cohesively styled, factory-finished commercial vehicle that smoothly integrated a cargo bed with their passenger car chassis elements. It measured over 200 inches long. Consumers were confused by a utility vehicle that rode like a limousine. The suspension made gliding over rural dirt roads exceptionally smooth. Betty Thatcher, America's first female automotive designer, influenced the elegant exterior trim and intricate interior cabin details. She understood that commercial transport did not need to look brutalist. The passenger suspension parts proved quite durable, allowing it to easily handle serious payload limits without buckling. Production stopped in '47, destroying the tooling dies forever. Archival footage hardly even acknowledges its existence. True automotive desperation birthed an unusual creation in Compton, California. Two brothers wanted to manufacture a cheap utility vehicle starting in the early 1950s. Lacking actual factory infrastructure, they raided local junkyards to create the Powell Sport Wagon. Scavenging crews dragged around 1,200 wrecked 1940 and 1941 Plymouth sedans out of the scrap heaps, stripped them down, completely refurbished the chassis, and welded angular steel and fiberglass bodies right over the renewed frames. They sold a brand new hauler built completely on recycled parts. The manufacturing process was entirely unconventional. Builders even integrated a hollow slide-out tube into the rear fender specifically designed to hold wet fishing poles. This design showed genuine creativity. The operation collapsed when they exhausted the local supply of Plymouth donor cars, forcing the company to pivot back to manufacturing scooters. This marked the end of a unique scavenging operation. Look at the 1947 Crosley Pickup next to a human being. It genuinely looks like a miniature toy. Powell Crosley made his fortune selling affordable radios and auto parts. Despising excessive Detroit iron, he envisioned a future where Americans drove hyper-efficient micro vehicles. His pint-sized pickup weighed practically nothing compared to a standard rig. That original engine block featured brazed copper and sheet metal construction, which suffered from galvanic corrosion as tap water slowly ate pinholes through the cylinder walls. It produced just 26.5 horsepower. A strong gust of wind could alter your steering trajectory. Navigating dense urban delivery routes, this tiny machine squeezed through alleys that would trap a standard Ford flathead. But post-war America craved excess, not economy. Gas flowed cheaply, and space stretched infinitely. Crosley's miniature project died quietly in the background, outmatched by the consumer gluttony he tried to combat. Back in the mid-30s, the Ford Motor Company refused to build four-wheel drive systems. Executives considered it a useless gimmick. Engineers at Marmon-Herrington saw an opportunity and stepped into the void. Modifying standard rear-drive Ford haulers, they ripped the front axles out and installed aggressive transfer cases alongside powered front differentials. These machines were extremely capable. The U.S. military and remote forestry divisions bought them immediately, using them to drag equipment through bottomless mud and vertical timber trails. They invented the modern heavy-duty off-road segment single-handedly. Ford watched these modified trucks dominate the wilderness for years before finally realizing their own historical mistake. Without Marmon-Herrington taking that initial financial risk, the entire 4x4 market expansion stalls out for another decade. The most unusual story in this historical record wears a GMC badge. You have never seen the 1957 Palomino because it was erased from history almost immediately. Watching Chevrolet struggle with the Cameo, GMC decided to build an even more extravagant version just for the auto show circuit. Mechanics dropped an oversized Pontiac V8 engine between the rails. Painting a commercial vehicle in a cream over gold two-tone scheme was considered bold. That interior rivaled the most expensive European coupes. It sat under the harsh spotlights of the 1957 New York Autorama, dripping in custom details, proving that a work hauler could be premium transportation. Executives observed the stunned reaction from the crowd. They subsequently ordered the project canceled. It was simply too expensive to mass produce. The concept was scrapped before it ever hit the assembly line. These 10 machines represent visions of the future that the market rejected, destroyed, or simply forgot. Factories told you the standard pickup evolved naturally. The reality is quite different. It was built on the backs of these beautiful failures. Every modern luxury cab, every off-road package, and every sport-tuned engine evolved incrementally over decades, though these early pioneers offered a glimpse of what was to come. They were decades ahead of their time, and they paid the price so modern trucks could thrive. Share which of these historic trucks you respect the most in the comments below. Subscribe for more authentic automotive history.